Welcome to another episode of What If Civilization Started Over? We are in episode 58, and this is the third and final part where World War I will be fought. In episode 1, we saw the war in Europe settling down already after a few years. But in episode 2, we saw the further development in Asia that's also settled down now. But in Africa, the war is still going on, but Rosewood left the war because the civilians of Rosewood were exhausted and their economy is crashing down. Amethyst and Peanut Brown made a peace contract to not fight each other anymore. And over here in America, the front had just opened because Brown attacked the colony of Yellow. Because Rosewood had left the alliance of Red, some others are following Rosewood's steps. Amethyst, for example, leaves the alliance because they felt the danger, they felt pressured by Rosewood if they wanted to leave, and they saw they wanted to leave. With that, the peace contract also expires with Peanut Brown, as Amethyst really clearly says, I opt out of this war. It was a mistake entering it. With that, they also make sure to leave Dark Blue alone, and Dark Blue is very happy with that because they lost almost one of their most thriving cities, two of the most thriving cities right there. And two more countries are going to leave the alliance. Honey also leaves the war. They are also exhausted. They speak with Red and just clearly say, I did spend a lot of my money to your country, to Rosewood, to Hot Pink, but that eventually backfired. So they had a major loss there. Their civilians didn't want to fight anymore. Dark Magenta is pressured and a lot, so they have to stay. But a country such as Butter is also leaving the alliance. Because what they do, they joined the new Southern Pact. And a country that's hesitating to leave as well as Sandy Yellow, but they feel like that they have to stay. Just because they only got this major city of Dark Blue, it is a part of revenge they have against the people of Dark Blue. What they did to Silver, but not only that, also Night Blue. So they stay in the war just to gain, yes, only this settlement. But because the major power Rosewood left the war, they also leave the fronts. How badly they have wanted, they leave Olive alone. The new purple country is left alone. They leave this brown country alone, but that country already surrendered. So beige and dark green just retake it. But the two annexed countries of Rosewood, Rosewood isn't going to leave them alone. Rosewood sees an opportunity there. But a section they also have to leave is Dark Blue, and how badly they don't want to give up these fronts. They will give up this section right there and half of this northern one, but the other one they sort of sell it to Sandy Yellow. Now the African unification is not so unified anymore. We only have Dark Magenta here that's pressured by Red, so they even don't want to be in there. Yellow is still there, Red is still there. This gold country is, gone. They are annexed. We have Sandy Yellow, we have Cyan, so these two are still in the alliance. But we also have Dark Violet. Seeing that all these countries disappear from the alliance, they also leave the war. And Red is actually happy by that, because Red did not like this country. It was far too ahead from itself, from the plans of the African Unification Alliance. It went into Europe, it made happen the First World War in the first place. So Red is happy because of that happening. But now the alliance is very weak. The retainers are happy that they have won the war. They said it very quickly because yes, although they have won so far, it's not done yet. Countries down south do want to maybe leave the alliance, but then Dark Green says something very interesting, but they are right. The war isn't over yet. We have to fight the leader of the alliance, Red. They're still operating. Let's hurt them elsewhere. Dark Magenta gives the order, because they are sort of the leader of the alliance, but together with these two as well. They give the order to give these 3 countries the boats they needed to sail away. And with that, South Africa makes a landing in the colony of rats. But also this light blue country makes a landing in the colony of rats. That happened quickly, indeed. But Rat isn't focusing on their colony at all. They are focusing on the fronts, right here. But quickly, together with dark green forces and other forces of the countries of the retainers. This is a hell of a large operation by the retainers, their largest ones, because this is overseas, done by overseas countries in Africa. In the meantime, Brown is steamrolling through the Yellow's colony, and they are getting quite far as well, gaining another settlement after a while, and thickening their fronts, and their coastline they occupy. They go island hopping right here, threatening other cities right here down below. They make it rough for the Yellows, but they are not stopping with fighting. It took them a while to counterattack, but eventually they do. They forget about what's happening right there. They want to get these settlements back. They make sure that Brown isn't going to get near to these 2 major settlements. Those are one of the most important ones, as those 2 make the most contact with the land right here, with the capital city. But they also make sure that Brown isn't able to get more south than where they are now, making sure that they are not getting these 3 settlements at all. This is a little bit bad for Brown, because Brown did not expect this, that Yellow could fight off them so well. Down south, however, Red is losing coastline in their colony. They make sure that the South Africans are not getting much more inlandwards, but they did get a major part of their coast and just already much land. But the 2 fronts are not able to get more northern or just more inlandwards. This is purely an operation to distract the rats, but the rats know that although they still have forces left here, they could not send forces from back home, because they are busy themselves. But Dark Yellow is able to fight back off the rats pretty well, making a breakthrough back to the country's original border too, just to help out Baby Blue a little bit more. Together with Dark Orange, what they do succeed with. The fronts are breaking up into 2, and it is a war back and forth. Even Hot Pink gets help from Dark Green down below, because the war has been fought right here. Rosewood isn't going to fight anymore. So with that, they could fight back the rats pretty well. They were able to free up this settlement even. Now Rat is even seeing their lack of power. They see that they didn't really had any saying in their alliance. They lost so many members to their south, even 2 that just switched sides. The Steel Country did, but they surrendered over to the retainers itself even. But also Hot Pink. Honey left, Rosewood left, Amethyst left. Luckily that country left, they said. But they lost so many grounds that eventually Rats experienced the same as Rosewood. The people were exhausted and their economy was crashing down even harder than Rosewood's. The king had to make sure that there was no major rebellion or anything like that, but it was looking like that they are losing power in their own country. And after some time, Red felt it the hardest way as well, as a rebellious group popped up to their east. A group that is done with the rule of Red. The rebellious group quickly takes over the Holy Island and quickly wins ground, and Red loses ground to their east. This will make the war harder for Red, that now they have to fight with an inner war as well, against an inner war. And how the people are fighting, how they say they want their independence, and just they want the Reds gone, they feel it's familiar, and it is familiar. From a bloodline, they have fought 2 times before, in Iberia for example, and eventually a large part of Europe in their hands, together with a main empire here in Mesopotamia. But these 2 countries eventually disappeared again. But this one, they feel like it's time to go back up. More and more of the eastern cities are breaking away, and the outer areas as well, but just major sections as well. Near Butter, for example, as well, and near the coastline, and eventually one that's pretty threatening the capital right here. It is getting rough as we see a major rebellious war breaking out in red. Meanwhile, South Africa is able to get more land out of the colony of Red, making sure just to mock them as well. Just get a lot of land out of it, making it feel dirty. They want to keep the land they get here, maybe to get a colony of their own. They threatened the first settlement after a while that they already got 3, but eventually the news slips through and boats arrive from mainland Red, and a major rebellious group popped up in the home country. And right here, this settlement eventually broke away from the colony of Red. The same rebellious group we had in Red. Red is losing ground. But all the ground they are losing, Hot Pink is able to fight off the Reds pretty well as they are leaving the fronts. They want to make sure the country is just running again. But other fronts are not leaving at all and are even doing the exact opposite. Red is even fighting back the Dark Yellows harder than before and is endangering a settlement right here. They are fighting hard and eventually entering the Yellows country from all sides, gaining 2 settlements right here and threatening the next one already. The front is large and eventually Dark Yellow doesn't know what to do and asks help from others, and they eventually will get that, but it is getting far too late for them maybe even, as the front is heading down south. But we still see a major section of the war be on the side of the retainers, as the front here in Hot Pink is totally given up, as well as its eastern front of Baby Yellow is totally given up. Red doesn't want to fight here. Weirdly enough here, to their west, they do fight back the Baby Blues. And this makes everyone very confused. Is Red just focusing now on the country they have the hardest? Are they distributing forces all the way over the country itself? Or is something else happening? And it is the last option. As Red is now a nation with 3 main groups. The group here in the north with a very major part of the population, but then a more of an east and west part of the country, where the capital is still in the hands of. That section fights back. But troops that really more identify themselves in this group or even the other one stopped fighting against the countries. That's why we see a clear west and east front thing happening right here. The east flat, but the west keeps fighting. These 3 groups make it clear to each other that they don't want to belong to one of the other 2 groups. That will make it hard for the king. But it's going to be even worse for the king of Red, because he gets assassinated. Not by the Dark Red group. Not by this purple group, but by the Red group itself, where he has the most influence still. They killed the king. Although they kept fighting, they were not happy with that man in rule, and with his whole bloodline being in rule. The bloodline is not getting killed. No. It will not be a Germania thing, what happened here. But the whole bloodline is being banned for being royal ever again. A new leader steps into place. A leader that liked what happened in the Alliance somewhere. That's a major ideology shift for the Reds, but also for the 2 other groups that don't want such a leader. Because Reds became fascist, and that shocked the other 2 groups. The new leader, wants to expand. however the state is of their country. The two other groups want their independence. But this fascist leader is also done with the old bloodline idea there was. They clearly see that they have lost World War I in a broader perspective, that the African unification idea has fallen to the ground. So they left the alliance. Red left the alliance because these other two groups were even not in the alliance officially. They also wanted Red to leave the alliance. But leaving the alliance doesn't mean that the ideas to expand doesn't exist anymore. But we see a major counterattack by the Baby Blues. Now finally that they have fought everyone out of their country. Dark Yellow too. They make a major counterattack, freeing up these two major cities and eventually working their way up north to the other ones. Breaking through to Baby Blue, encircling these troops and eventually killing them, but as well many are leaving the war, seeing the mistake their fascist leader made. Well, even their king made. Although this leader wants the same land the king took before him, but it's done. They are done. The troops are done fighting, and eventually Red has no outside claims anymore. And although the war in Africa has been fought, the war over here in America hasn't been fought yet. It's not done yet, as this large rebellious group has gained more territory here in the colony. But the purple one also gained territory right here, making sure to gain land as well. And it's getting a mess. It's getting a whole lot more messier than Red ever wanted it to be. Eventually they see that the country is also just attacked by the other two groups. Well, mostly the other group, because they don't border the other one. But the dark red group does go across the Mediterranean Sea and gaining territory they claimed centuries ago. They go up north, claiming everything they want to claim, and eventually, well, everything is claimed. The fascist leader does fight back this other group, and it is pretty successful to gain back some lands. But this is a war that he will maybe not even win, that maybe no side will win. Eventually this group enters, well, other wasteland areas and is gaining a lot of ground. Now bordering Baby Blue, but also getting closer and closer to Dark Yellow. This fascist leader, although, loses even more ground. As down south now also has a group that wants to break away. They also have some troops stationed in these settlements that want, well, their independence from Red, because they are done with everything, with this now new fascist leader. That's not what they all want. Totally not. And eventually these two groups come across each other as well. And they are going to fight each other too, because they are not happy. They are not happy that another group formed, but they are just fighting back and forth. And eventually this blue one does get the upper hand, as more and more cities here in the north do favor that one instead of the red fascist leader. Over here in the colony, we see the blue country gaining more land, as well as South Africa. They're now entering the more inner areas of Red's colony. But as well, Dark Red gains more and more land, and the purple area, they gain this settlement before the other one do. But this red territory, there are still some red civilians that, well, are loyal to the fascist leader. Yeah, they still exist too. It is all getting the more messier in the country that used to rule over a large portion of the power rankings of the world. Brown, however, is getting closer to that same title as well, as they are having a great success invading Yellow's colony. They eventually had the breakthrough right here to gain land onto this island, and gained these 3 settlements, all 3, breaking through this front line and meeting up with the other one, making a large formation. And it is all getting more rough. Getting another settlement in their hands. And eventually working their way together to these two settlements that still have contact with the outside world, but they eventually lose that as well. It had been fought, so they thought. Dark Brown thought that they won here. And yeah, slowly but surely they will realize that they have won the war here in America. They steamrolled through the country, and there's eventually no one to stop them. As no more troops arrive from mainland Yellow, it has been fought. As although these two settlements still have contact to the outside world, Yellow doesn't send anything anymore. Now that Red has been falling apart, Dark Magenta doesn't see any pressure to stay in that alliance. Yellow also eventually just leaves the alliance. The country down south, that's green, dark green, pastel green and beige took. Yeah, they make sure that they also leave the alliance, but the golds still are here. They of course are still here. No one is killed completely. They say that they will leave the alliance too. And Sandy Yellow and Cyan also leave the alliance after hearing what is happening to Red. The African unification is gone. The retainers have won the war against them, and slowly but surely the peace treaty would be made. Although the war hasn't been fully fought. Many see this as the end of World War I, but the inner fight that Red still has will be fought forwards, and as well the last part of the war against Yellow. Yellow also eventually sends a higher up to the capital of Brown to sit together. That's when they eventually don't fight anymore against one another. They came to an agreement that Dark Brown stops fighting completely and that they will be also going to make a peace treaty with each other. Now that everything has been settled between Brown and Yellow, the only warlike actions that still are going on is Red itself and their rebellious groups. But it all will soon come to an end as well. As slowly but surely, the colony will end first. South Africa is gaining much more ground into the south of this colony and gains a settlement. And eventually meets up with the border of Yellow, the colony of it, and mostly they get help from this light blue country too, to eventually gain all that. This purple section gains all this, and dark red just gets a little bit more, because the rest is of that same group that still follows red. All these groups eventually come over to this city of Dark Mint's colony, saying to each other that they are done here. They are done with fighting. All the groups are exhausted, because still, although the retainers won, these two countries are not that strong, so they eventually opt out. But the red groups, like Dark Red, Red, and this purple group, they all come from the same rats. The rats that had civilians that didn't want to fight anymore, but fight against the retainers. So fight for themselves, they did want to do that. But their economy as well, and just everything crumbled down. That's the same rat. That's why these group eventually decide here to stop fighting. And that eventually, slowly but surely, is known here in red as well. With this blue group, one of the only few left to still fight on, eventually even gaining land on the Canary Islands as well. We see that this blue group is on the border of these two settlements, before finally this fascist leader itself also surrenders and wants a peace treaty made. With that, he also makes it clear to the whole African Unification Alliance that it's no longer there, but also to the retainers, that a peace treaty would be made, as now we are in the year 1811. This war inside Red itself took almost 1.5 years longer than the whole World War I. Down in Central Africa, they were already done and waiting for a peace treaty to be made, but Rosewood waited for Red, but that took a while, because that's, well, tumbled down. But they didn't make the first step to say so, to make a peace treaty. But now, with everyone done fighting, we will take a look at the second peace treaty of the war, because we didn't look at the Asian one as well, and then the third peace treaty with the retainers, and eventually the fourth peace treaty, because Red has a peace treaty within as well. So let's take a look at the Asian peace treaty with the Democratic Alliance, the old Communism Alliance that, well, was here, and the World Destroyers. So here we are for this peace treaty, and we firstly see that Lavender will get a colony. Yes, they will. These islands will also be theirs. This is the first time after a while that they now have overseas territories. But we will also see Light Green get a little bit out of this war because, well, Mint did fight them. So that's what they will get. What we also see happening here with Mustard is that this blue country will gain these 4 provinces. Yes, 4. And purple will gain these 3. But the big elephant in the room is that some things will happen. We see that Peach will gain this section of this pink country a little bit more than the provinces they used to have with these countries that were here. And as well these sections and this northern section of Slate. But now the more interesting parts about this all. Because we still have Dark Coral right there. But in the peace treaty, Peach acknowledged that they didn't liberate the country, that no one rescued it, that Slate did get it rightfully. And Slate is not gonna annex the country. No, they make a puppet state out of it. They of course have to leave the alliance they were in now, and democracy no more, and the capital city is demoted. They are a puppet state without a capital city, which means they are completely ruled by Lavender. They even sent a new governor over there to rule over the place. But the last part of this peace treaty still has to be made, as when we open up the province map that is a little bit out of date now, but will be fixed soon, is we have Taup right here. But they are now forbidden to forever again to unite with Dark Lavender. Dark Lavender is spit out. They must be a different country than Taup. Because yes, Purple did annex a little bit of land right here, but they didn't want it. So they made Dark Lavender reappear again. So that was everything of this peace treaty. Dark Coral is now a puppet state. These areas are now taken by the countries near it. Dark Lavender is back. Lavender gained this part of Mint. Light Green got this little slither. And Peach expanded their borders massively. Now we're on to the third peace treaty of World War I, the African peace treaty. And this peace treaty is a rather quick one, as it doesn't involve Red itself. We see that Sandy Yellow gets this small part of Dark Blue. They eventually did not gain this settlement right here of another province was created, no. Yeah, they just even didn't really want it themselves as well. But Cyan does creep more down, creep more southern, as they gain this province right there. We are now right here. This steel country is fully released together with this gold country, but they have to do something in order to, well, stay like that. Both countries have to join the retainers, and the steel country already did, but not this gold country, so now they are. Every other country does stay in the alliance for now, other than Peanut Brown, who will leave the alliance. But now another elephant in the room, which are these two territories against Rosewood. Rosewood is going to puppet state them, both. Their capital cities will be demoted, and both kings have to step down, as Rosewood is going to, well, rule over these two sections. Interestingly enough, Rosewood did not lose any territories in this war, as they surrendered and eventually gave up every other front they had. That's why eventually the retainers decided to not, well, give them a punishment, as their punishment was already given by their own people. The riots within. There were many rebellions into these cities, but nothing really came out of it, with eventually a whole rebel war, unlike this guy, so the retainers left it with that. Before we look at this peace treaty with Red, Yellow and Dark Brown took it upon themselves to do a separate peace treaty. The Peace Treaty of North America, which was held in the capital city of this dark teal country. The Peace Treaty of Africa itself was held in the capital city of Butter, and the Peace Treaty of Asia was held in the country right here, this blue country and this capital city of it. But now the Peace Treaty of Dark Brown and Yellow. This peace treaty was also rather quick, as Brown will just gain a little bit more land out of it. And now we see one of the first major things happening that happened never before in this world. A major settlement is split into two, as this major settlement is right on the new border. Brown wanted to have the settlement massively. Why? There is no specific reason for it, because, well, they really wanted it, as that's the only city they eventually wanted to have. They saw that everything else was just unrealistic, and they wanted to have that settlement, but Yellow didn't want to give it up. So after arguing, and eventually 2 late nights into the peace treaty, they decided to split the city into two. A west side, that was Brown, and a yellow side, east. The people were divided, but they were free to roam over the border if they have if they want to go to work, or to their friends or family, whatever. But the border was made. Now you were living into a different country if you lived in the west, or vice versa. With that out of the way, let's take a look at one of the most interesting peace treaties of maybe this whole war, except for Europe. The Peace Treaty of the Empire of Red. As we see a familiar fate returning, but also 2 other groups that want their independence, and a very aggressive, stubborn, fascist leader. The first new country that will form is that the Dark Red country returns right here, and they gain this Iberian part of Europe as well. They also have a territory over in the colony. They gain this slither of land, these 2 settlements, together with this island right here. Next, we see that this purple area is huge, but mostly consists of these 3 settlements, and they gain a colony. That's interesting, because they are the first country that has a colony in the world without having actual ocean access. So if they will get this colony for long is just a question. But now we also see this last new country form in Red's old territory, this blue country, going all the way south. They will get these sections of the Canary Islands, as well as these 3 islands of Red. But now the last section of this peace treaty, as we still have 2 areas to color in. This light blue country will have a colony overseas, right there. And South Africa has a colony, right here. The actual biggest colony right now, that came out of this whole colony mess. And that's because they got the most land in this war, right here. Making this now the new world borders. But we have to look at the ideologies and the capital cities. The capital city of this blue country will be right here. The capital city of this purple country will be this one right here. And the capital city of this red country will be right there. The ideologies will be interesting, as although these 3 sections of Red fought against Red because they were not in favor of the fascist leader, that doesn't mean that no one will be fascist as well. As this blue country will have a fascist leader, as well as this purple country, but as well this dark red country. They all got fascist because a new fascist leader came into the leadership. That happened fairly agreeable. Although some people did still believe in the original bloodline of rats, and well, now the fascist leader as well, the idea of the king slowly faded away among the people. And the fascist approach, all these 3 countries wanted to try it on their own, and their own version. And that will make it. This is the end of World War I. The last peace treaty has been made, and the world is looking far different. The African Unification Alliance is gone. We have a colony mess here in Africa, where rats used to have a lot of land, and just the whole map is looking different compared to 5 episodes ago, or just before the very beginning of World War I. But meanwhile all that, we of course had Red Australia, which did not really take a part in this war at all, other than just, well, giving a little bit of supplies to the retainers. They had colonized the whole Australian continent. Together with South Argentina, this is what they got in the meantime, and the rest was eventually all claimed by the Red Australian country. New Zealand wasn't discovered yet, but mostly every area and nook and cranny of the world was discovered, as well as not Hawaii, but to color everything in dark pink, got these northern islands eventually discovered and claimed. With a world war behind them, the world slowly worked their way back up. The New World saw what happened everywhere and started to really be careful with sending their supplies and their technologies over into Europe, but that eventually happened. But the alliance that Bronze made, the economic alliance, did do something not really so fair, as they did not give any items or technologies over to the Communism Alliance in Europe, but they did eventually give to the Southern Pact. And of course the African Unification Economic Alliance was departed, as that was no longer there. Dark Coral had to leave the alliance, the Economic Alliance of Peach. And overall did the Economic Alliance of the Retainers grew after the war. Countries seeing that they had an opportunity to grow over there, to grow with the Retainers. But eventually a lot of countries in this Economic Alliance. The Southern African countries too. But not this one. Even Dark Magenta was allowed to join the alliance. But the world finally went into peace. And for a long time nothing really happened. Countries went into peace, but some countries went to isolation to, well, build back up. Such as Rosewood. And rats somewhat. But was there something else lurking in the background somewhere else? Something daring? Something dangerous? Something hopeful? Well, let's see that in the next episode of What If Civilization Started Over? The Aftermath of World War I.